Hello and welcome to episode 8 of Missle Industries Ford Falcon 351 Cleveland GS Wagon Crusty V8 project. And in this episode I'm going to finish welding that cracked subframe. Now I've made a start on it. Late one Saturday afternoon I found some 10mm bar and I thought to myself, that'll probably fit in that gap without me having to cut anything off it. So I bent it loosely into shape and I tacked it in. Then I went full send and welded it completely in. So there it is. It's not going anywhere. And then I tacked up the cracked subframe as best I could, carefully, and ground it back. What I'm going to do today is add a strip of metal right across there from engine mount plate to engine mount plate, because once the engine goes back in, I don't really want to take the motor out to fix that subframe, so I'm just going to fix it now because it won't cost me much money to tack it all together. And whilst I was buying my doeskin armrest, the guy that was selling the armrest was telling me that when you weld metal into these old Fords, it's best to use metal from similar age old Fords because of the way the metals were made. And if you don't do that, the welds don't really work out that well. And it's just better if you just weld like for like metal into the car. Now, that's a pretty valid point. But I've been welding chunks of 89 E34 BMW sunroof panel into my other Ford, and I'm going to keep doing so because it's convenient and I have it right here to chop up. Since it's already ruined, can't get any worse. Now that I have my piece of sheet metal cut out, what I think I'm going to do is tack it at each end, but first I'm going to obviously do some more grinding so I can get this welded in more thoroughly. After I've hammered it flat to suit this contour, as you can see here, folds down. I can try and shape that with the piece of metal out of the car, but what I've found in the plaster is when you tack it in, you can hammer it to shape pretty easily, and then you can just weld the rest of it in. So that's where I'm at so far after about half an hour of backyard fabricating. I'll tack that in sometime later because it's time for dinner. It's Tuesday. Time to weld this chunk of metal in. I think that will do for the welding segment of this episode. Now that the grinding is complete, it's time to hide my handiwork forever and ever and never speak of it again. Now a coat of satin black to wrap this project up. Summary time for episode 8's subframe crack repair. Now, I'm no welder, and that probably shows, but crude yet effective, or just crude? Feel free to weigh in the comments section about what you think of my fabrication skills, positive or negative, but the job's done, and hopefully the motor doesn't plop out onto the road in the future. And in the near future, hopefully next episode I'll be able to get some paint onto this engine bay, because that's my next step. Once the subframe was repaired, it's time to get painting, and I just need to knuckle down and do all the prep work, tape everything up and bomb it with paint. But more on that next week.